Okay, if we look at 2, 3, and negative 9, these are all solved by factoring. These do not have any common factors. Nothing goes into 2, 3, and 9 other than 1. So I want to look at what are the factors of 2 times negative 9 that also add to be 3. What are the factors of A times C that add to be B? So that's negative 18. So that's a positive and a negative. So 1, a negative 18, negative 1, 18, etc. So I'm trying to think of ones that make 3. Probably 6 and 3. So let's see, I could have 6 and negative 3, or I could have negative 6 and 3. Which combination makes positive? Well, it's going to be positive when the larger value is positive. So I'm going to break up my middle term. I'm going to split 3p apart to become 6p minus 3p. I'm going to now group my first 2 items. I'm going to group my last 2 items. The first 2 have a 2 in common and a p, the letter p. So I'm going to factor out 2p. If I take 2p away from here, I'm left with p. If I take 2p out of here, I'm left with just 3. These 2, the leading coefficient is negative, so I must factor out a negative. The leading coefficient is negative, I must factor it out. 3 and 9, 3 go into both of them, so I factor that out. So when I take away negative 3 here, I'm left with p. When I factor out negative 3 from negative 9, I'm left with positive 3. I'm left with positive 3. To check, negative 3 times positive 3 is negative 9, all equal to 0. Notice we have p plus 3 in common. So I'm going to factor out that p plus 3, and then I'm left with 2p subtract 3. I can now set each factor equal to 0. I can now set each factor equal to 0. So I can say p plus 3 equals 0, and 2p minus 3 equals 0. So p equals negative 3. 2p equals positive 3. P equals 3 over 2. 7, 55, 42. Okay, first thing you're going to ask yourself is, are there any common factors? If there are no common factors, see what multiplies to be A times C. So 7 times 42 is, let's see, 14, carry the 1, 28, 294. All right. And I'm going to give an apology again. After graphing this one, we would not solve this one by factoring. Okay, if you try to factor this, was going through the list, there are no factors that make the negative 55. It is decimal values. This is a great candidate for the quadratic formula. Okay, when you can't factor, when you factor, factoring is fantastic. But when you cannot factor, quadratic formula is a great candidate. Okay, so let's look at number 13. Let's look at number 13. Okay, is there anything that multiplies to be 2 times negative 49 and adds to be 7? So that would be negative 98. Alright, so let's think of the factors of 98. Okay, so it's not going to be 2. Does 4 go in there? 4 does not. Let's see. I'm going to use my calculator here to help me out a bit. Calculators are a wonderful tool, especially when dealing with larger values. I do expect you guys to be familiar with smaller factors. Larger factors, though, feel free to use your tools at your disposal. So let's see, like 98 divided by 7. Okay, so 14 and 7. That was actually a really crazy good guess. Okay, so do that by investigation. What's 98 divided by 2? What's 98 divided by 3? What's 98 divided by 4? And so I happened to just guess 7, and it worked out really nicely. So I could have 7 and negative 14, because a positive and a negative make a negative. or I could have negative 7 and positive 14. And what's great about the number I chose is when you add those, you get negative 7 or positive 7. And we wanted the positive 7, so we're going to go with these factors. So I get 2v squared minus 7v plus 14v minus 49 equals 0. It does not matter the order you put these v terms in. Alright, so now I'm going to group my first two. I'm going to group my last two. The first two have a v in common, so I bring that out and I'm left with 2v minus 7. The leading coefficient is positive, so I'm going to bring out a positive. And what goes into 14 and 49? Well, 7 goes into 14 and 49. 14 divided by 7 is 2, so I'm left with 2v. 49 divided by 7 is 7. And you know you're doing it correctly when they end up with this binomial in common. So I now bring that 2v minus 7 in front. And when I take that out, I'm left with v plus 7. So 2v minus 7 equals 0. V plus 7 equals 0. 2v equals positive 7. V equals 7 halves. V equals negative 7. There are several methods to factoring out there. Okay, there are several methods to factoring. Okay, but this method is my preferred method at this time because it does work in 100% of cases. Okay, it does work in all situations, and some other forms work only in special cases. This all focuses upon your knowledge of distributing and factoring common factors, okay, and it does not involve any additional trick. There are some great organizers out there, so if you have another form of factoring that does not make it wrong, it is okay. Alright, but this will be the method I demonstrate. Alright, so now let's look here. Let's see if there's any common factors. Okay, so first thing, they're all even. So let's take care of that. So I get 45 r squared minus 2 goes in there 96 times minus 21 equal to 0. I actually recognize these all as being divisible by 3. So 3 goes in there 15 times. 3 goes in there 32 times. 3 goes in there 7 times, equal to 0. We're done getting rid of any common factors. So now I want to see what multiplies to b 15 times negative 7, and then we'll add to b negative 32. So 15 times negative 7. And we can definitely do that by hand, but sometimes it's nice to speed up the process. Okay, so and what makes negative 105? Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and use my calculator to help me out. So I'm going to do 105 divided by, well, let's see, 2 doesn't go in there, so let's try 3. So you have 3 and 35. I am just on a roll today. I am on a roll. So 3 and negative 35, or negative 3 and positive 35. Well, notice these guys make negative 32. So once again, I happen to guess right the first time. Okay? And that's okay. If you don't guess right the first time, just keep trying values. Okay? Keep trying. You'll get there. As you become more familiar with all your multiplication tables and with numbers and how they relate, it will become easier for you to guess a closer pair the first time. So I'm going to group the first two. I'm going to group the last two. So this is grouping. They have a 3 in common and an r. So 15 divided by 3 is 5, and an r came out. 3r came out front, so there's still a 1, because 3 divided by 3 is 1. The leading coefficient is negative 7. They have a common factor of 7. So negative 35 divided by negative 7, I'm left with 5 and r. Negative 7 divided by negative 7 is positive 1. Okay, so common factors. I bring 5r plus 1. And I'm left with 3r subtract 7. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. And I'm going to solve for r. 5r equals -1. r equals -1/5. Add 7. 3r equals 7. r equals 7/3. And that's it for factoring for now.